Pretty thrilled, pretty excited. Does anyone need to take a stretch? We were sitting for a very long time. All right, so I'm really excited that I get to follow in after Cal just spoke, because a lot of what I'm going to touch on kind of follows in the footsteps of what he was talking about. Okay, so I'm guessing a lot of you guys are, raise your hand if you're in the market for a job. All right, raise your hand if you're maybe in one right now, but you're not really sure. Okay.
Well, aren't you, I think the point, one of the takeaways was that you should probably always be in the market for a job.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so that's one of them, I would say. The other one is I feel like, oh, come on in. If you're just coming in, just grab a handout. If you, I would say, always in the market for a job doesn't have to be somewhere else, correct? Because I'm always evaluating when you're in a current position or in an organization, how can you potentially shift in that organization as well, right? So, does anyone have any burning questions they want to make sure that I address today? Maybe you didn't get to. Okay, I'll ask you at the end again. So if I go over some things and there's more questions, just feel free to get back to me. All right, so I'm going to talk today about getting engaged. And I don't mean, obviously, getting engaged the way that women and men or men and men, whoever does. What I'm talking about is getting engaged in your work, okay? And my job is a career coach. I am more of a generalist. I am not financially minded. Do not ask me to provide you expertise on the organizations that you guys often are looking for, but what I can provide you expertise on is how to stay happy in your job, all right? How to get into a job that you most likely are going to have higher success, higher chance of being happy at, and then once you're in it, how to try and maximize and leverage where you are so that you can stay happy. And I'm really glad that Cal spoke a lot about kind of being excited and happy in your job and feeling successful, because that's what I want to keep you guys focused on. I want to ride that wave and keep it going. My name is Jani Cornell. I'm a facilitator and coach. I am the owner of Dive, Developing Individual Value and Excellence, and I'm focused on helping individuals within organizations and then individuals maybe outside of organizations get in, right? A lot of my clients I do with nonprofit, church, leadership groups. I run leadership classes and facilitate workshops. I do a lot of work with individuals helping them communicate better in the workplace. So one of the things that Cal talked about was that idea of having some of those people skills when you get in your job, being able to interact, navigate the workplace. That's often where I'm focused, to help people understand better how to navigate those relationships, build those mentor relationships, and become more successful. I also do individual coaching. So inside the workplace for organizations that have people that really need to grow in their careers or are looking for doing something else or might need a little help communicating more effectively, and then also for those people that are looking to shift their careers or move somewhere else. That's where I concentrate some of my coaching as well. All right, so what is engagement and why does it matter, right? That's what I'm going to focus on today. So who knows what engagement might mean? When you're in your job and you're engaged, what does it mean? Go for it.
Feeling passionate about the work you're doing and you know, looking at it more than just punching the clock at the end of the day type of activity.
Definitely, right? Okay, who's, so you said not just punching the clock, feeling like your work means something. I'm going to give you guys a fair warning I didn't give you at the beginning as well. I'm not a presenter like the other two. So I'm going to ask you questions and I'm going to make you work together a couple of different times because I want you to get a little bit of movement out of this. And what I'm also going to hopefully do is that my goal is by the time you leave this session, you're going to have a couple tools that you can use on your career search or on your career management journey, like Cal was talking about, that you can continually refer to, okay? So oftentimes I might ask you a question, and I'm okay with some silence for a while if you guys want to provide it. At the same time, know that I might ask you a couple times to get into partners or small groups, and there's not too many of us, so welcome. If you just got here, and there's some handouts on these two tables up here, make sure you get them before we do our first exercise, yeah. All right, so a lot of us, what I want to focus on today is, oftentimes I have people come and say, I need a new job, I need it right now. I need to find the job, I need to make this much money, I need to be this, but they're forgetting about this huge piece, right? The piece that you can get a new job, you can make a lot of money, and you can get yourself in that position with that title. But if you're not happy in the role, you're probably going to last somewhere between 6 months and a year. Or you might be there longer than that, but are you going to be happy? No, right? You might have checked some of the boxes, but you weren't able to quite identify before you got into that role if you had a chance of being engaged or not, if you had a chance of really feeling successful and being happy. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is how you can maximize your chances of becoming that engaged employee when you look for your next job, or maybe in your current job where you are now. All right, so quickly, what engagement looked like? This, right? Yes, this is pretty extreme. These are not my children, and these guys are actually playing a video game. They're not, they're not working. But the idea being, when you are really engaged and you feel really bought into your job, I say it's when you're drinking the Kool-Aid, all right? It's when you love your job, you love your company, you love what they stand for. You talk about it to other people in personal situations. My husband used to make fun of me because one of my passions is helping people communicate better at work. I pull it out at parties, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. He's like, do you know you're talking about that? I was like, oh, I am. So you're living it, right? You also are probably one of the most successful in your company and in your industry. When you're engaged, you are by far more successful and usually more profitable and more productive than most people that you're working alongside of. So it's something a lot of us are striving for. Has anyone, raise your hand if you feel like you've been this person in any job before, even if you were 12, right? It's okay. All right, so you know, some of you know what that feels like, to feel like you're rocking it. You are owning that job and you can be really happy being there a long time. Raise your hand if you're there now. Okay, right. That's okay. Because this is what statistics show us, okay? Statistics show us that only about 30% of us are actually there. That if less than a third of the US workforce is really, really in love with what they're doing, feels extremely bought in and is maximizing their strengths. But over 70% of us are either disengaged or actively engaged, okay? And for the most part, raise your hand if you now or have been in one of these two categories. You're either pretty apathetic, you're coasting, you know what's happening, you've got it made, you're making the money, but you're not excited. You might be kind of navigating career sources, yeah, you might be looking at other options. And then I want you to also, whether you've been here or you know someone that's been in this category, and actively disengaged is the category where that person is honestly angry, disgruntled, working against the company, going out to work something like, I don't even like my company, I don't like my boss, I don't like da-da-da. So anything, think about that person, because we've either all been there or we know that person. But these people, there's almost as many of them as there are engaged, right? And the actively disengaged are doing everything they can do to undermine what the engaged and the disengaged are doing. They're like, all right, I'm gonna just try really hard to make sure that everything is not successful because I'm angry. And sometimes I will say the disengaged are pretty hard to spot because we've all been there, or you all might be there now, we've all been in that position. We're easily swayed. We're easily brought to the actively disengaged. And we're easily swayed if we can, if the right pieces put into place, we can move over to the engaged side. So if you do feel like you're in that disengaged category, don't worry, you can make it there, all right? And that's part of my job today, is to give you some of the tools and tricks that you can use. I think for me, I guess the saddest piece of this, and I feel like for our entire industrial workforce, you know, this was a lot of this information that I'm going to share with you today, especially with Gallup. It's pulled from the 2013 State of the Workforce report. A really amazing study to kind of like millions, 25 million people, and did a lot of studies across the workforce. And to know that over a third of us are not engaged in our job means that we're not using our strengths. We're not maximizing how well we can do. Our companies are clearly not going to be making the money they can make because that's the companies with the most engaged employees are doing that. So how can we get there, right? All right, so this is a quick one about why you should care. Obviously, I've already talked about everyone wants to be happy in their job, but it's not just happiness, okay? Because I think some people fool themselves into think, I don't really need to be happy in my job. I have my personal life, and that's fine. I can just kind of get by on my job, and I'll make up for this other way. And you can, and that's fine, and I completely respect that. On the same note, you should care because it's going to matter in your job. It's going to matter. You'll be 50% less likely to want to leave your job, and your company you work for will have 50% less turnover if you work for an engaged company and you feel like you're an engaged employee. You will be, let's see, 41% less likely to make a mistake if you are engaged. I don't know about you, but if I could make less mistakes, I'm all for it, right? None of us want to be making mistakes. 21% higher productivity, so more productive, and then 22% more profitability. So you're going to be 22% more profitable if you're able to be engaged. And then most thing we all want to do is any company with the highest amount of engaged employees is going to have a higher earning per share. All right, so all these companies we hear the most about how successful they are, most likely they have a large pool of engaged employees. Now what's really interesting is we're going to touch on, I'm sure Google's employees are extremely engaged, right? But just like Cal was saying, you don't want to jump into any company with engaged employees because they might not match your type of engagement, right? My engagement does not mean obsessively working on search engine optimization and staying there day in and day out and working, all hours of the night. So we're going to talk about that next. Okay, so like I said, Gallup, State of the Workforce Report. I know these questions are extremely hard to read, so it's actually on a handout right in front of you. If you check the handout that has the checklist on it, you will see the same 12 questions on that checklist. What this is called the Gallup 12. The Gallup 12 it's called the Gallup survey that Gallup puts forth across the world, and they've kind of become married to these 12 questions. Between 1996 and 2005, they did a huge amount of research worldwide, trying to figure out what were those distinguishing characteristics that defined engagement in individuals, right? What made Bob more engaged than Sue? Why was Bob performing higher and Sue wasn't? What were those defining characteristics? And these are the 12 things they have come to define as being key factors in engagement. And if someone can meet all 12 of these, if you in your job or in a future job can actually check all 12 of these boxes, it is very, very likely you're going to be extremely engaged. That you're not going to feel disengaged, you're not going to want to leave. You're going to feel like you're tap dancing your whole way to work, right? Like Warren Buffett had mentioned. And what's really interesting about it, if you look at the list as well, there's a specific order. The order matters. So the first 2 questions on your checklist, I know it's expected of me and I have the materials and equipment. Are you thinking about those things new to a job or when you've been in a job for a while?
Been in it.
Both? Okay, been in it. So maybe, but for the most part, when you get in the job, you're like, all right, what am I doing? What's my job? Do I have the computer I need? Do I have the resources? Did you set me up with the right software? Do I have a phone? Did you alleviate any kind of obstacles I might have to do that project you gave me, right? So those very base ones are those first 2. And as you move down, 3 through 6 are really focused on your value, okay? So do I feel like I bring value to my organization, and do I think my organization values me? And does anyone know the #1 predictor of your job satisfaction, and also maybe these 4 questions, how you're going to know if you feel like you're valued? Cal touched on it briefly.
Your supervisor.
Got it. Nice one. Yes. Your direct manager is the #1 influence, and if you are going to feel like you are valued or feel like you contribute value, because they're usually giving you the most immediate feedback. And they're letting you know, good job, bad job, this is where you're going. So that's a really key indicator in those 3 questions, okay? 7 through 10, very focused on the culture and the fit, and Cal talked about that. Do you have a friend at work? Which just sounds crazy, but that's actually one of the pieces of the Q12, do I have a best friend at work? Which I remember reading that, and I was like, what? Are you kidding me? But it's really important. Something else, do you fit in with the culture? Just like he brought up the Google example. Are you going to fit in with that culture, or are you going to feel like you don't quite match and it's not going to really be a good fit for you, so you're going to stay on the outskirts and kind of feel like an outsider? Oh, sorry. And then the last 2 are directly related to you learning and growing. So as you're an employee and you're in an organization, it's almost the life cycle you're going through. You're starting out, do I know what I'm supposed to do? Do I bring value and do others value me? And then do I kind of fit in or do I not? Raise your hand if you've ever been in a job where you did not feel like you fit in with the other people. Okay, I've been there too, and it's awkward, right? You're like, am I crazy or are they crazy? I don't really know, but I don't fit. All right, and then the last 2 are all about are you learning and growing, right? You've met the 10 and you're like, okay, well now I'm bored. I need to learn something new. I need to develop a new skill. I need to continually be honing Stephen Covey would call it sharpening your saw, right? If you're not constantly sharpening your saw, making the tools internally better, you're never going to feel successful. All right, so now you guys get an exercise. If you haven't already done this, think about a recent or current job. Maybe when you're in now, check every one of these qualities that you feel like you've met. So think about a good job, bad job. Which qualities have you met? Then I want you to circle the 3 to 4 qualities you feel are the most important to you. So right now I'm going to ask you to kind of customize what engagement looks like to you. So if you were going out on the job search right now and you had to determine what do I want to make sure is going to be available to me or is going to provide me with that kind of feel or experience, what are those 3 or 4 things that are most important to you? Okay? I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to do that, and then I'm going to ask you to get in table groups. So you 3 might want to make a group on the outside, and then you would be a group, and then you guys will be a group. And then what I'm going to ask you to do, once you've done the checklist activity, use each other and strategize. What are some tricks, tools, maybe it's resources like LinkedIn or something we talked about earlier that you can use to answer those questions before you start in a company, right? So if one of my big ones is, I want to know, this is really important to me, right? The last 6 months, someone at work has talked to me about my progress. You're going to strategize, what are some things you could do to try and learn about that organization or that group before getting involved with them? Does that make sense? Okay, ready to go. So you 3 stay together. You 3 are your table. Yep, you 3. And then you 2 stay together. And then, I can't read the time, sorry. 1, 2, 3. If you guys find a way to get together and strategize how you can try and figure out how to meet those engagement needs before you jump into a job.
I think the best way to answer a lot of these questions is somebody who works for the company, or even better, someone who works and someone who is formerly worked for the company, and find out what the disconnect is, why the opportunity stops.
Good.
It's my challenge to buy stores to do
People had a great experience. You don't get mediocrity.
This is my opinion too.
You know, I've associated with work as feeling like we're all ideas and
Who was in this role before?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. And I don't know, you know, if you do have somebody that's honestly, I think that'd be the most No, but I can do interview. Yeah, and if you ask why the person before me, you could be like, well, because I'm terrible. You're not going to get that. Yeah.
I actually love the video.
I've heard the whole. I'm showing by career.
Yeah. Sometimes they look before you use that crazy party.
But if that's not one of the things that's most important, that's really matters.
Yeah.
If that's the other pieces. How do we start? No, I mean, I check one.
So you start for you.
I actually don't have it checked, but I have the stars checked.
So that messes with the timing.
I think that,
Yeah.
On one look at it.
Just,
but
just.
so this is something
You know,
it's like what really
I'm
is the
doing some
best
of my own. It's like,
thing. Can you get those?
there's always some way to convince yourself that you're wrong.
All right, you guys have 2 more minutes.
I think that's what
Yes, clients.
right? Like, skip one of my field stresses.
Or, ask them.
Yeah, but I could.
Right, like, why do you want to do this? Or what's your impression? I think one of my, being very my most shocking is that I see how eager in the microverse yeah, see, and New Belgium is really finding that constantly. So you want to be a competitor, great, let us know. I mean, yeah, because they were all of these process over nothing.
So all they really have, I mean, all they really have is their intellectual property. And their simple business, that's not cutting edge. So that's very surprising to me.
Yeah, ask, yeah. Start painting. And do nothing. It's competitors, like, not sure. I mean, it's even interdepartmental. I mean, it's position, it's competitive. You're not on the same team. Yeah, I know. From that.
Obviously, the way I interact with the data and tell me about it, if you're not actually asking them some pretty personal questions.
All right, guys, does anyone need 1 more minute, or are you guys good?
Good.
You guys, I can tell you guys are good. Okay, all right. If you're not good, listen to each other. Now I'm gonna ask you to share. Someone think of something you came up with at your table, okay? So share with the rest of the group. Who wants to start? Something, a strategy you might already have come up with.
Interview customers and competition.
Nice one, right? Good one. Interview. What else?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
What are some strategies that you would do when I asked you to strategize with your table group? What are some steps?
So during an interview.
What was that?
During an interview first.
No.
No, that's great. Before you're gonna work. Yeah.
Because you knew your idea.
Okay, you can interview competition. What else?
There are websites that review companies like Glassdoor.
Oh yes, you could look on
Sure,
Glassdoor.
everybody's looking at our
No, I mean it's good to just get a reminder if you haven't been doing it in a while. Like, oh yeah, I need to look at Glassdoor, right?
What's your opinion of Glassdoor?
That's a really good question. I think it's good and dangerous. I think it's good because it gives people that are angry and frustrated or really supportive a venue in which to review a company. But I do think if that's all you look at, that's not a great idea. Is that fair? Does anyone else have other views on
Majority of people are
Glassdoor?
going to be the angry people, right?
Right.
just like on Yelp or anything else.
Well, yeah, it depends, right? Yeah. Anyone else have opinions on those kinds of review sites for companies? I'm a huge review reader, so.
Yeah, I would just say that I think it's a good source of information. You need to take it with a grain of salt. But I worked for an organization that tends to get slaughtered on Glassdoor. And I think it's the kind of thing where I think people should read those reviews before they would meet with an organization, but also understand that they're heavily weighted by a very small sample size and people with very strong opinions.
Yeah. Or there's the, you read it and you read someone like, oh, that's me, that happened to me, that's exactly, then you're like, wait a minute, would I fit in with that culture, right? If that person is describing the exact same problem I'm having right now, is that culture similar to where I am now? So maybe I should steer caution. What else?
I think having coffee with people that work at the company you're trying to get into, I find that's kind of a good idea to pick their brain about it.
Definitely. Yeah, just even ask them some key questions to kind of roundabout figure out, have you got a conference in the last year? You know, does someone really care? How's your manager? Do you get regular reviews? Things like that to understand if people are really engaged or really involved in the development of people, right? What else?
Talked about just really focusing on who you're going to be working for and understanding that individual, what their specific values are, their styles.
You mean the direct manager piece? Yeah, that's key, right? Does anyone have that experience where they don't have a great direct manager? That's really tough, right? It's like constant, it's like everything you're doing goes back to them. So if there's any way in the hiring process that you can try and figure out, assess, interview other people. I used to, when I went to, I actually used to work at the zoo and then I left and I went back and I worked at education and HR at the Denver Zoo. And when I was going back, I was going to start working for a new supervisor who I'd heard things about, right? So I was like, all right, I gotta learn this. So I actually was taking people either out to lunch or coffee or calling them, just saying, all right, you've been in this position, you've worked for this person, what were some of the struggles you had, what do you think? And then you get some, as long as they're not so angry and disgruntled, they're putting those evil reviews, if they're kind of a little bit more balanced, sometimes you get a really good perspective as to what your challenges might be. And then you can realize, can I handle those challenges and those aren't a big deal for me, or maybe I can't, right? Like, where's that line in the sand for you on what matters?
Did you end up taking it?
I did, yeah, and I will say the challenges I dealt with were fine for a little while. I'm no longer there, not specifically for that. I wanted to pursue my own thing, so that's what I do now. But it was really good to know beforehand, so I didn't feel like I was just blinded when those really frustrating pieces of having that manager, you know, they showed their light. I was like, okay, I knew this. I'm not shocked. It's okay. Yeah. What else? Any other strategies? Right, LinkedIn searches, finding people. You can go there's a lot of different websites. You can just start like you can go on and start looking for if you can notice their values, right? If you're able to go on the company's website, they have mission, vision, their values. If you're able to get a hold of somebody quickly, if someone's available to answer your questions, or if they're extremely large, small, where are the ins and outs of the organization. You can some companies areas will let you look at turnover rates. If you see a really high turnover rate, and then oh, okay, you know, if you see on LinkedIn that there's all these people that have worked there for 6 months, and that seems to be the standard of how long people work there, that's probably pretty telling, right? If someone hasn't stayed for about 2 years, sometimes that's a really good indication they didn't have a chance to move forward. So yeah, okay, good job, guys. I know it's hard. I've made you work in groups. You probably didn't want to. You did good. All right, so the second piece. Now, the first piece I wanted to touch on kind of overall engagement, right? The second piece is more benefiting you. So Cal talked a little bit about that self-awareness piece, right? The part of knowing yourself and knowing your environment and having those two pieces play really large into moving through your career management strategy. So I want to focus a lot of energy on knowing your strengths. And I don't even mean just your strengths, right? Knowing where you excel and know where your blind spots are, where your triggers are, where you're not as strong. Raise your hand if you've taken any kind of self-assessment. Maybe personality, behavior, I'll put some of them up here, right? In the past 3 years, right? So we've got Myers-Briggs up here, right? So Myers-Briggs is a really good one if you want to take it. There's the Enneagram. Some people really like Enneagram, which puts you into one of 9 types. There's StrengthsFinder, which gives you anywhere from your 10 to your 34 strengths and how you rank across all of the different strengths. Emotional intelligence, how you perceive others and how others perceive you, how you kind of emotionally are read and read other people. A predictive index, a really good one to assess people when they're coming in on hiring decisions. I know some in this field have gotten that assessment. Either they provide it to their employees or they've received it. And then everything disc, that's one that I work a lot with, along with strength finders. That's really focused on your motivators, your stressors, your preferences, your tendencies, how you communicate with others, how others perceive you, where you feel like you naturally, your energy goes. Has anyone taken any of these? You, yeah, maybe. What are some other ones?
Should one that had like an X in it? I can't remember what it was called.
Okay. Fibro-B is a really big one. Bergman's. Anyone else?
Emergenetics.
Emergenetics is awesome. Yeah. Did your organization do it?
We did.
Oh, that's great. And it was embedded in an organization. That's really great. That's another little strategy if you guys can ask in your pre-assessments. Does your organization, do assessments on individuals to help them understand how to communicate more effectively in the workplace? And if people are like, oh yeah, we do DISC, or we do Myers-Briggs, or we do Emergenetics, you're like, that's awesome. Because that means the company's really bought in to helping people understand each other and work together and understand strengths. So understanding strengths, right? If you are working in your strengths every day, you are 3 times more likely to be happy and engaged in your job or your life in general. So if you're able to be doing what you feel is naturally comes easy to you, what makes you happy, where you feel like you kind of excel and where you're not even thinking, you're working and it's actually fun. If you're able to do that, you're going to be more happy. Another thing that we talk a lot about, I think, was an aspect of Cal's presentation as well, was that people skills piece, right? I think sometimes when we're in the job search, we're often concentrated on the technical skills, the location, how my skills match with that, the culture, what else I'm going to get in. But honestly, if you are able to be one of those people that can navigate the workplace and provide, I would say, understand how you come across to others, understand how others perceive you, and then also understand how to adapt and flex your behavior and kind of read them to know how to maximize those relationships, you're going to far beyond excel. Because, you think about it, the formation of every company, everything started with relationships, right? I start relationships. I am the one that's responsible for that. Even in a small company with 1 or 2 people, if you're getting clients, you're developing relationships. You guys are really involved in relationships in your job. I think that's a huge part of the work that you do. And so understanding how to maximize those and to use your strength while you're navigating those relationships is really key. And then something I also hope that you guys will kind of take to heart is that I feel like some people use the term soft skills for people skills, which I use as well. Say, oh, we need the hard skills, the technical skills, and the soft skills. And I respect that because it's a term that we've used for so long, but I think sometimes it makes it seem like those skills should be easy. That it should be really easy to understand emotive responses of people in a room. And you should be able to work a sales floor, and you should be able to do build those mentor-mentee relationships like that. When often a lot of us, that's not our strength, right? Our strength might fall more in the analytical end. It might fall more in the support end. It might fall more in the planning and the organizing. But getting out in front and really developing those relationships and using those interaction skills are hard. And if they are, that's fair. And that's what sometimes these self-assessments are so great at, is they'll be like, okay, you're really good at this, which sometimes might come off as, you're extremely good at analyzing, but it might come off as a little quiet and critical to others. So in order to maximize your relationship, ask a couple of questions beforehand, or approach the meeting ahead of time and blah, blah, and gives you tips and tricks. So I love these things. I do think there's a point where you can over-assess yourself. They are called self-assessments for a reason. You are taking the assessment. So as honest and as true as I fully believe in them. Not only the assessment, if you do have an opportunity to work with any kind of mentor, coach, anybody that can help you with those, so it's not just you looking through the information and processing it. If you can work with somebody, I'm guessing you guys have old bosses, or even some of you have professors or friends, anybody you feel like you trust that really understands you or is going to give you honest feedback. If you're able to work through one of those with them, or even a coach you hire, whatever it might be, work through it with them, because they're going to be able to give you that feedback, and you can say, I don't understand this part. Have you ever seen this in me? And they can say, I have actually. I saw the way that you seem kind of reserved at times, and maybe if you did A, B, and C, it might be a little different. Does anyone have any examples other than emergenetics of assessments they might have done, or feel strongly about yay or strongly about no good?
Myers-Briggs probably 20 times.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. Through organizations or on your own?
Both.
Wow. What are your thoughts on it?
School and,
Uh-huh.
I don't know, I mean, it's only 4 dimensions, so that, you know, I feel like people are more complicated than that.
Gotcha.
But I suppose you could say that on movies, but, yeah, and I mean, I like that it brings out extrovert and introvert so much because I think, for me, I'm extremely, extremely introverted, and that's had a huge impact on my career or lack thereof. So,
Gotcha.
Myers-Briggs was, you know, the first one to brought that up.
Right. It's like, hey, this is real. Yeah, definitely. That's great. That's funny you say something about being somewhat simple, because, or not simple, but there's only 4 dimensions. Because when I first took Myers-Briggs, I liked it a lot, but then I think like a year later, I was like, wait, which letter? I know I'm the E. And then after that, what? Wait, because there were a lot of letters. I wasn't remembering it very well. So some people were like, oh, there's too many letters, I need something more simple, right? I need a color, or I need my strengths, or I need everything disc, or I want a number, and I only want one number, you know? So what does that look like for you, you know? But the more you can kind of, if you haven't done any of those, I would say in the last 3 years, I would highly suggest doing one, whatever you think, you know, ask a couple people, look online, ask some references on what you think would be the best one for you. A lot of them will shift a little bit if you've had any major life changes, but they usually won't shift too much. So know that, but it is a good idea to retake it maybe and kind of read a little bit more into it. Okay? Good? Any more on those? Okay. All right, next I have a story for you. And you guys will notice this guy right over here, because I know him. I'm going to tell you a quick story, and I promise that it has relevance. But this is back, I took this picture back in 2009. I think it was right before a wedding in Crested View. And it was when I was in graduate school. So I was in graduate school for international development back in 2009 at DU. And towards the end of my graduate career, if anyone has been in graduate school, any of you guys, right? You're in that point where you're like, I've got to get a job, I've got it. I'm in maximum job search mode, right? I had my tons of spreadsheets, I had my binder, I was searching, I was navigating. And what was interesting is when I had initially gotten into grad school back in 2007, I was determined I was going back to graduate school in order to go back over to Africa and work with struggling populations again, either for a corporation or for a nonprofit. I was in the Peace Corps way back in the day. I mean, and I'd always had all of these jobs that didn't make a lot of money, right? I volunteered for the Peace Corps, I worked for lots of nonprofits, and that had been part of my being. But then I went to graduate school and I thought, all right, I'm going back, I'm going to work internationally, and I'm going to make money this time, because I've never made money before. Finally, I'm going to make some money, and I was determined, right? So when I was in graduate school, that was a large part of my focus. I was focusing on corporate social responsibility, working with large corporations over there. And at the very beginning of my graduate career, I met Brian over here, and was still towards the end of the graduate career on the job search and realizing, where in the world, how am I going to do this? Okay, that's it. I'm going to go back to Africa. No, I've got to stand up. No, I'm going to go back to Africa. No, I'm going to work for a nonprofit. No, I've got to work for a private corporation, right? So I was kind of in a spiral. It's almost like what Cal was talking about when you have to work through that values exercise. It's really long, and it's really painful, and it hurts, but it's really good that you go through it. So I actually was at that point going through a similar type exercise where I actually had to have a couple of what I call come to Jesus moments, where I had to really sit down and think, what matters to me? What are the values that I hold dear? What are the boundaries I need to draw on this job search? Because I was all over the map. And because of that, actually nobody was hiring me, right? I was looking at Catholic organizations in Africa, and then I was looking at renewable energy jobs in Denver, and I was all over the place. And once I finally sat down and really drew out what was extremely important to me, what my boundaries are, finding a job happened like that, okay? And what I found my boundaries was I wanted to stay in Denver, and I wanted to make some money. Now, granted, coming from me as a nonprofit background, making some money was pretty little compared to what you guys probably make, but at the same time, I had realized that there was a really big value at that point. There was kind of an identity that I had with myself that was important. And I ended up being really happy in a career as a government contractor for 2.5 years at the Golden Field office, you know? And if you would have, and that actually transitioned me into training and development, professional development, career coaching, all this kind of stuff. If you would have told me that is what would have happened throughout my career there, I would have told you you were kidding. There was no way. I was going back to Africa and I was going to see the kids. But I think during that time, I had to really define some boundaries, and I realized that it was more important for me to satisfy a couple of other personal needs in my career, in my job, and that I was going to try and help the world in more of an indirect way, right? I wasn't going to be in the field on the ground. And I'll be honest with you guys, whether you come to terms with this or not, there's some little demons living inside of all of us that are some of our past identities, some of the past standards we might have set for ourselves that are saying, like my old Peace Corps self saying, unless you go back over there, unless you help everybody, you're not really doing the job you were meant to do. Sometimes you really have to have some conversations or like do some inner work and realize what that might have mattered to me a while ago, but that doesn't matter to me now. Or it might matter differently. The way that it matters looks different. So the next exercise I'm going to have us do is called thinking inside the box. I know we're always told not to, but I want you guys to today, okay? So what I'm going to ask you to do, we're going to go through this exercise with me first, and it's not going to be with the example I just showed because I just walked through it, but I'm going to ask you guys to start working on defining the boundaries. Okay? What are your boundary qualities that you need to work through? And if you look at the second sheet, I actually gave you a hexagon instead of a square. Reason being that sometimes the first time you work through this, just as Cal said, you might have 60 or 7 values that pop up. The first time you work through this, having 4 is kind of hard, like narrowing it down to 4. So if you want to make 6 sides, if you need to add a couple sides, if you want to mix it off and make a square, that's fine. But I'm going to show you really quick, compared to me right now, what do we need to do. Okay, so this is me. I know right now in the type of career I need to have, through self-assessments and even through the kinds of jobs I've had and I have hated, that I need to be autonomous and have variety, right? That's important to me. I need to be somewhat in charge and I need things to change a lot. I need to be with people, and not just with people. I've narrowed it down to I like facilitating and speaking. So whether it's one-on-one and I'm facilitating kind of a change, or I'm speaking to a group, that's extremely important in any job I have. And then I like helping people be successful. Now that's pretty broad, right? I'm pretty broad about how I help people be successful. I'm okay with that. And then I need it to be in the Denver metro location. That's where my family is, okay? So I'm just gonna start putting up some jobs that you can notice that I have not been a church pastor, but I've had a good number of these jobs, and they all fit within this box. Now, are these jobs very similar? Right, no. Some of them are, some of them aren't, right? But it does start me thinking, okay, I've got this box. What are the plethora of things that could fall in this box that are a potential for me? Sometimes when we're on the career search, we get very, very, we're very focused to the point that it's good and bad, right? It's so focused that we're clear with our message, but we also are so channel focused, we have blinders on, we don't see other opportunities around us. So one of the reasons I want to help you guys do this is to help you understand, okay, I know what my boundaries are, so that when I'm talking to somebody and they mention an opportunity, I can quickly run through in my head, does this fit inside my box, and can I actually go ahead and pursue this opportunity, right? So here's some examples of things that do not fall inside the box. Oh, bad font. All right, an e-learning designer, okay? I have done that. I have been on the computer and designed e-learning trainings, and I'll tell you what, if you want to talk about you are not with people, and that was too hard for me, right? I needed to be with people. A bus driver, I have done that. I was a bus driver for a semester in college. It was terrible for me. But you want to talk about you're with people, you could be in the Denver metro, but there is no autonomy, right? There might be variety in people, but I have nothing to say about where I'm going when I'm doing it. And then a quality assurance auditor. I've actually done that as well. And I can help people be successful. I can be here. I'm probably not with people, and I'm probably not autonomous, right? So I can notice really quick, I was not happy in that role. That role was not for me. All right, and it was because I was really clear with my boundaries. So I want you guys to practice that right now. You might have already started. Whether you use your hexagon, or you make it a square, or you make it an octagon, or a pentagon, whatever you make it. Create your boundary qualities, add additional boundaries if you need, and then brainstorm different roles within different organizations that might fall within your boundaries. And I would encourage you again to work together. I'm not going to make you, but reason being, because we get so focused and we only know what we know, sometimes other people help us kind of shift the way we're thinking about something. And I will give you 7 minutes. Oh, they're in the middle of an exercise.
You're what?
They're in the middle of an exercise.
Okay.
It might be.
Did you try to power it up again?
There was a power cord here. Oh, I know. Yeah.
Well, there's like okay, one more minute. All right, let's say last minute up. Anyone find out anything, think of anything new and exciting? Willing to share? Okay, you're not. Because the thing I got out of mind was that I could be a church pastor, so that would be my next job. No.
Yeah, movie director fits all of my.
Oh, really?
There you go.
Oh, okay, you get to be a movie director?
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I never thought about that. Yeah, I for a while thought about being a school teacher, and then I always have like put a toe in and then brought it back because of the autonomy piece. But I think, I don't know about you guys if there's anything you were able to outline, but one of mine, that autonomous with variety, I think for a long time I thought was just something I liked but wasn't really necessary for me, or maybe it was just because I was younger and I wasn't like, it was something from back in the years until I took enough self-assessments that said, oh yeah. And then one of my strengths finders told me that communication was a really big strength, being able to speak to groups or talk to groups, and so that's something I've been like, okay, and actually that wasn't just something I enjoy doing. I enjoy doing it and it provides value, and I thank you. All right, see if this will actually work. Oh, gotta remove hardware.
Is it,
Hold up.
where is it?
It's just telling me to remove hardware. It's fine.
Okay.
The last slide is basically, would you guys do, what kind of questions do you have? I wanted to save room today for some questions, and it has my contact information.
How did you find jobs when you picked up the different sides? You said a school teacher, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I do right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, that's what, okay, so I would say there's a couple different things. Taking any kind of self-assessment, career assessment. There's some books out there, right, you can go gather up. There's books that actually divide careers into different types of things, especially when you're in your bubble, I call it. It's really hard to stick your head up and look outside that bubble. Talking to other people, right, it's family, friends, people you trust, saying, okay, I've outlined this. Have you ever thought about me in any kind of role? And I don't mean it always has to be a huge career shift, right, but something I've always said is a lot of times we don't even realize the job that we like doing happens in a variety of different organizations and institutions, right? An example is anybody that works as an accountant, every single type of organization needs an accountant, right? Whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, the leader of an organization or training or any kind of HR, all of those things are they're in different areas. Talking to people outside of your industry would be my biggest one, right? Whether you know them well or you feel like you can just trust them to kind of be able to confide in, so that you don't feel like they're in the same bubble as you, not able to crack the code. What else?
guess it's really defining those things that do matter most, because at times I think I know what it is, but and I pursue a situation that matches that, and I get into the situation and I'm like, wow, everything I looked at, it matched. Like there was the autonomy, there were these things. What is the wrong component? And because it fits so many of the right ones, there was like this, there was a seventh wall that I didn't put there and I missed it.
Yeah, that's a good
But
point.
that is like, as was said in there, that even if it's just one of all of them, and one of them is broken, then the whole thing is discontinuous with who you really are. I guess it's actually being able to properly do this exercise enough so that before you get into the situation.
Right, and I mean, there's no guarantee.
Yeah.
It's a really good point, right? You can have the most amazing company, have done all your research, it's the perfect job, and you work for a crappy manager, and you're like, wait, that's the one thing I needed to work, right? And you can do your homework and you can get into that perfect situation and the company could shift, right? Or completely transform. So there aren't any guarantees, but I think a lot of it is you did this exercise. If you do the exercise Cal talked about, if you do some self-assessment, if you dive into it, the more you just like explore and get really, really true with yourself, it's gonna be easier for you to recognize those pitfalls. And also, I mean, you guys are early in your careers. This is part of the journey.